Hey YouTubers, it's Charlie. So if you guys ever wanted confirmation that 2016 is not complete garbage, it's Spider-Man making jokes about the Flash rebirth in an Avengers title. So I'm going to do an explanation for what's going on, why Flash showed up during Avengers, what's going on in that first Avengers title, and how Marvel is preparing you for movie stuff with what's happening in the comics right now. This is a perfect example of why I read comics. You find moments like this, like laugh out loud, oh my god, I can't believe they stuck this in there, but it's just so subtle that you would miss it if you weren't paying attention, or if you hadn't been reading The Flash and you didn't know that Godspeed had been the big villain of their first big rebirth arc. So if you haven't been reading comics for a long time, I'll explain. Mark Waid wrote The Flash for a long time. He wrote a big run during the Wally West era after Barry Allen had gone away during Crisis on Infinite Earths before Geoff Johns had come onto the title and did the original Flash rebirth. I know there's a Flash rebirth happening in the comics right now, but it's basically like a DC-wide rebirth. Geoff Johns did the same thing with the Flash and Green Lantern a long time ago. So next to Geoff Johns, Mark Waid is one of the most famous Flash writers. He wrote some really awesome Wally West stories that the TV show is now borrowing characters from. So there's a lot of Flash history. Every once in a while, Mark Waid will make a joke about the Flash, no matter what he's writing. But for the last couple of years, he's been writing a lot of Marvel titles. So he's doing Avengers right now. They're kind of in the middle of their own version of Rebirth just because of Secret Wars, Civil War 2. So they've reformed the team, and if you're confused about why Civil War is still happening in Marvel Comics right now, but we're already seeing this new team, it's just because the Civil War comic has fallen behind schedule. So you're seeing stuff that's supposed to be happening right now. You should have already read the entire Civil War story. So whatever ends up happening, the Avengers basically fracture, so they have to form a new team. This is that new team. You have the Nadia Pym Wasp, you have Jane Foster, Sam Wilson, Vision, Hercules, and now Peter Parker, who is a wealthy industrialist with a bodyguard who is Spider-Man funding the Avengers. It looks like something right out of Brad Bird's Incredibles. Like this entire Avengers #1 is so classic Avengers, I love it. The artwork is amazing. The way it's written is amazing. This is a good example of what a comic should be. Like if you want a lesson in writing really fun comics, Mark Waid is your teacher. But I say classic Avengers, if you haven't read really old Marvel comics like the original Avengers stuff, what happened is when Tony Stark was first part of the Avengers, he was the wealthy guy funding the team, and the story was because he didn't want to reveal that he was Tony Stark underneath the armor. He still wanted to keep his identity secret. He would say, "My friend Tony Stark," and then Tony Stark had a bodyguard named Iron Man. So effectively, Spider-Man is the new Iron Man of the Avengers. He has this giant headquarters in the Baxter Building. He's talking like classic Iron Man talk. The dynamic is the same, but obviously it's a very Spider-Man style sense of humor. So if you haven't read it, I would highly recommend you check out Avengers #1. It looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. The big tee-up arc is this time war with Kang. Vision goes after Kang when he was a baby because Kang is a time traveler. So really the only way to get him is to go back to the moment of his birth, but it goes sideways. The rest of the Avengers find out about it. And then Kang grabs multiple versions of himself from different parts of the timeline, and they all go after the Avengers at the moment of their birth. So that's kind of like the tee up for the rest of this storyline. So the other thing, at the end of #1, they kind of tell you, these are the things that are going to be happening this season in Avengers, is that you see them face up against Doctor Doom in his Iron Man armor. He's in Stark Tech armor because he is now the infamous Iron Man, which I'll talk about in a second. But you also see them going up against the Champions, which are kind of like the rest of the other all new, all different Avengers, forming a kid Avengers team. So you have all the kids in the Marvel Universe, like the really cool ones that were in the Avengers title, split off during Civil War to form their own team. So it is confirmed 2016 is not all complete garbage. I'm so happy. When I read this comic, not only is it an awesome story, the artwork is amazing. I totally love this. You find things like this Flash joke and you're reminded why it is that you read comics. Oh my god, you don't really see stuff like this in TVs and movies. People make jokes, like Cisco on the Flash TV show makes Star Wars jokes, but it's not funny like this because you would only know what's going on here if you were current with the Flash Rebirth comic book and if you knew that Mark Waid, who is writing this comic, also wrote the Flash for a long time. So all these characters are written really funny, but you're digging for good story, this is where you hit gold right here. But what does this have to do with Spider-Man in the movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, like Avengers Infinity War? So people say the comics have nothing to do with the movies. That is not entirely true. We know that Marvel Studios is making a huge push for Spider-Man next year. Because of the Spider-Man solo movie, they want that to do gangbusters, but he's also going to be an important part of Avengers Infinity War. So typically, because comics are so far ahead of what they do in the movies, it takes a lot longer to make movies than it does to make comic books. So since the days of Marvel Phase 1, since the Marvel Cinematic Universe started blowing up, they've used comics to sort of inception people, prepare them for big things thematically that are happening in the movies, but specific plot is always, very, very different. So really all you should take away from this is that Spider-Man is a very important figure in the Avengers in the comics, and in the movies he's going to become a much more important character. So they just want you to be thinking about Spider-Man working with the Avengers. So that's happening now in the comics, that will happen in the next couple of years in the movies. But on the flip side of that, some of you will think this is a bummer, but I don't think it's a bad thing. They're diminishing Tony Stark's presence in the comic books. He's becoming kind of this ethereal figure. He's also taking a diminished role in the Marvel Cinematic Universe because even though Robert Downey Jr. is still going strong, he'll still be in a ton of Marvel movies, he will slowly be shuffled to more of a background role. Think about the way Tony Stark is going to appear during the Spider-Man Homecoming movie. He's going to be an important part of it, but a very small part. So that's also happening in the comics right now too. Peter Parker pushed to the front, now the billionaire industrialist, Tony Stark pushed to the back. So even though the comics continue to be separate from the movies, they're just testing out ideas, preparing you for things that are happening in the movies with comic book storylines. But what I'll do next is I'll do a video for Infamous Iron Man #1. There's a whole lot of stuff going on that explains why Dr. Doom was so obsessed with Tony Stark and why he's now using Stark tech to make his Doom armor. He's basically assuming the mantle of Iron Man, but there's a whole bunch of stuff happening with the Tony Stark character as of the end of Civil War II that explain why it is everybody else seems to be taking stuff from him and he doesn't seem to have any money anymore. So I'll explain that in the Infamous Iron Man video. Be sure to subscribe to get that. And if you guys want me to do more comic book videos, just let me know. We're heading into the end of the year, meaning a lot of TV is going to be going away, so I will have extra time to do more comic book specific stuff. But I would like to do that anyway. It's hard to do comic book videos without dropping some of the other videos that I'm already doing. So get hype and be sure to read some comic books this week. There's a lot of really awesome stuff happening. While you guys wait for that to post, you can click here for my Doctor Strange review, and you can click here for a big behind the scenes Thor Ragnarok video. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Let's high five. I'll see you guys tonight.
There are two types of beings in the universe.